here is the Cressington carbon coater. In principle, it's similar to the Cressington sputter coater, except it doesn't use argon gas, and it doesn't use gold, instead it uses carbon. Specifically, it uses these graphite rods, which is the same stuff as the lead in your pencil. So the reason why you might want to use the carbon coater over the gold coater is that, one, it doesn't need argon gas. So if we're running low, like now we don't have any argon gas, you might want to use the carbon coater. Or if your sample for the SEM contains a lot of carbon, then you might want to use the carbon coater instead of the gold. If your sample for the SEM contains a lot of gold, or if you just want the elemental identification to work correctly, since carbon has a lower atomic number, it's going to cause less noise in elemental identification in the SEMs. So the first thing that we want to do is actually connect the carbon coater to the vacuum pump. You'll notice on the back panel here that there's this rotary vacuum pump connection, and we have to connect it to the vacuum pump down here. So how do we do that? Zoom in here. So this is the gold coater, and right now the vacuum pump is connected to the gold coater. We want to move this connection to the carbon coater. So there's this clamp here, there's the pump, and then on the inside there's a seal. The first thing that we want to do is gently unscrew this clamp here. Alright, we got the clamp off. Let's just put it to the side. And see that little black piece of rubber there with tubing? That's the seal. You don't want to lose this. And by the way, I should mention that the reason why we're wearing gloves is of course because our finger oils are going to contaminate the seal, and that can ruin the vacuum. So right now I'm just moving the vacuum pump underneath the table so that I can actually get it closer to the carbon coater pump valve, because it's kind of a short and unwieldy cable, unwieldy tube here. You might even have to rotate the actual vacuum pump itself. But it looks like that's pretty good. Okay. Now you want to put the seal back on and connect it. And then get your clamp, attach it around the seal and the main pump nozzle, and then close it. You might have to untighten it a bit so that you can actually get it around the clamp fully. And make sure you tighten it really well, otherwise there's going to be a leak and you won't be able to maintain a nice vacuum. So after this, the vacuum pump will be connected to the carbon coater. Now we just have to connect the actual electrical cable. Another thing you want to keep in mind is you want to make sure the vacuum pump isn't in the locked position. So if this little lever here is looking like that, then there's actually a valve here that's closed, and even if you turn the vacuum on and you turn the carbon coater on, nothing's going to happen. And you're going to be sitting there wondering why you're not getting a vacuum, and you're going to be looking for a leak where there isn't a leak. So you want to make sure it's in the open position. Alright, that's pretty tight. Now we just go back over to the gold coater and we remove the electrical cable. I'm just going to make sure it's turned off. And it's the same cable for the carbon coater because it's the same company and it's almost the same machine. Alright. Come around here. So this is the front panel of the carbon coater. When you turn it on, this little power switch is going to light up. This switch is for checking the vacuum or the current. Right now the vacuum pump isn't on, but when it is on, you want to press this down, and while you press it down, this little line here is going to indicate what the pressure is. The bottom markings are the pressure, and the top markings are the current in amps and millibars. Now this display here will tell you either the timer or the voltage. So firstly, you always want to keep the setting switch in auto, because if you go in manual, it's just going to complicate things, because you're going to have to set the voltage to some decimal value with this knob here instead of these like settings. I don't know why they even have a manual here. But in order to set the timer in seconds, you want to press and hold timer while pressing the set up or set down button. It's recommended that your timer is at 6 seconds. To change the voltage, you press and hold the voltage button and press the set up or set down button. It's recommended that your voltage is at 4.2 volts. So now I'm going to turn on the vacuum. And to turn on the vacuum, there's a switch all the way back here. For some reason it's hidden from our view. But you just flick that switch and you're going to hear the vacuum turn on. So now we can actually check if there's a vacuum in the carbon coater. So again, by pressing and holding this down, you can see that this bar is moving closer to the 0.01 millibars. Now, if that isn't happening, one thing that you might want to check is this top knob here. Notice how the white marking is going up. If I were to rotate this, which I can't right now because there's a vacuum, but basically, well, actually it's the other way. If I rotate it this way, that's gonna let air go in, and that's gonna open the seal. So you want to make sure the marking is going upwards. Otherwise, if there's still not a vacuum, then it might be because there's a leak somewhere in the system. Maybe you haven't tightened this properly. Usually you can hear where the leak is, or you just have to wait for a little bit. Okay, so let's check the vacuum again. And this looks pretty good. We don't have a sample in there right now, but setting up the sample is the same as setting up the sample for the sputter coater. What you do is you take a clean SEM stud, you use some copper tape to paste the tape onto there, you put on your non-conductive, non-magnetic sample, and then you place it in the sample bed here. And you can also adjust the height of the sample bed in the same way as the sputter coater. So there's one more thing that we want to do before we turn this thing on, and that is put this black tarp over the machine. Now the reason why we have this is because the vaporization of carbon releases a lot of light, and if anyone looks at it directly, they are going to damage their eyes. Obviously, if you're the only one in the room, you shouldn't look at it directly. But this is a public space, and we don't want anyone to accidentally ruin their eyesight permanently, because that would be very bad, and we'd probably lose funding. So after this is all set up, all you have to do is just press the stop button here. So if I press this, that light's going to turn on. It's going to go for 6 seconds. And then if I want to stop it at any point, I can just press it again and it's going to stop. So let's press it. And you can see the current is increasing. And you might have even seen a little bit of light coming out from underneath there. But that is it. That is the carbon coating finished. So you can turn the power off. And you can turn the vacuum off. And let's take this tarp off. Just put it back underneath. Now, to open this, we want to release the vacuum. And here's something that's important. As always, you do not want to touch the carbon rod source immediately after using the carbon coater, because it's going to be extremely hot. And you can see that the sample stud here, this is the back side, which is like shiny, and the top side has clearly been coated with a layer of carbon. You can even see in more detail here where there was carbon coated and where the sample stud was covering the stage. Also, you can remove this little gold part if you want to access the stage better. This nut here allows you to, if you just untighten the nut, then you can rotate the stage clockwise to tighten it and make it go down, or counterclockwise to make it go up. But other than that, that's it for the Cressington carbon coater. The last thing that you want to do after using your carbon coater is reconnect the tube back to the gold coater, assuming that we still have argon and gold foil. So it's basically the same process as I showed you before when we were attaching the tube. And we're really just going over this so that you don't forget to reconnect the vacuum tubing to the gold coater. So again, you unscrew the clamp, take it off, make sure that you don't lose the seal. Then if you have to, rotate the vacuum pump. It gets a better connection if I make the tubing go underneath the table leg this way. Looks like I might have to rotate it a little bit more. Okay, that looks pretty good. Put the seal back on. Attach the tubing with the seal to the connection. Then put the clamp on. You want the screw to be going towards the wall, otherwise the argon tubing is going to get in the way. And then you just want to screw it back on. And again, you might have to loosen it in order to screw it back on. And make sure you get a tight connection, otherwise your vacuum is going to leak. And finally, you want to reattach the electrical cable back to the sputter coater. So that's pretty tight. Now let's gently remove the cable. And attach it to the sputter coater. That's it for how to use the carbon coater. Okay. So after you use the carbon coater a couple of times, you might want to reload it. So the first thing that you want to keep in mind is never to reload the carbon coater after it's been used. The reason why is because after the vaporization of carbon, the rods are going to be extremely hot. You see there's this copper wire here that's just exposed. There's absolutely no insulation whatsoever. You can even see some burning on the metal there. So you don't want to touch this immediately after use. Wait like 15 to 30 minutes. And after that, you can reload it. But first, let's talk about why you might want to reload it. So you can bring the camera close here and just get like a top-down view. So why we might want to reload it is if the carbon rods that are touching each other are flat. So this goes into more detail in the SOP, but basically, this right here is a static carbon rod, and this carbon rod is connected to a spring which is pushing it against this one. When the machine turns on, an electric current gets sent through this carbon rod into this one, but this one, this moving carbon rod, is normally with a sharp end. In fact, it's going to look like this. Notice how there's a sharp end there? Because of that, the electrons are going to displace the carbon and vaporize it. So in the situation where both sides are flat, what you want to do, which you've already seen me do just now, is you want to loosen this first screw here to take out the static carbon rod, and you can just put it on a Kim wipe on the test here. Then you want to loosen the second screw for the moving carbon rod and just thread it through both holes. And we don't want to get rid of these carbon rods even if they've been severely used. The reason why is because there's actually a sharpener which you can purchase that's going to get the tip back. We don't actually have the sharpener right now, But when we get that, we can just reuse the rest of these carbon rods. So after that, we're going to go down and look for the packet containing more carbon rods. It's just underneath the box here in this bag. It's going to be in this container that's labeled pointed carbon rods. So you want to open that up. And they're just going to be in this little bag here. Now, these haven't actually been used yet, so I'm just going to reuse these. But you would just open this with a pair of scissors and do what I'm about to show you. So you want to orient the moving carbon rod with the tip facing outwards. So let's go back here and let's get a top-down view. Yep. The tip is going to face this way, right? And if you can see there's a little hole here, you want the point where the two carbon rods touch each other to be right below that hole. All right. So notice that I've put the tip a little bit forward of the hole. The reason why I did that is because, again, it's connected via a string and a spring, and I want to maintain some pressure against the second carbon rod. So let me just move it back a little bit. Okay, so that looks pretty good. And now let's take the second carbon rod, and for this one, the flat side is going to be going where the hole is. Okay. So it's always the sharp side to the flat side. All right, so that's how you reload the carbon coater. Now you just want to close it and then put this back where it was. So in the bag goes underneath the tarp in the cardboard box here. That's how you reload the carbon coater.